a little different for me, but then it's a little different for all of us. Just very casual. I'm just made some notes on points I wanted to make, and I wanted to take you through my thoughts on doing business for good and the work we do through HISBE. And then I'll do that for about 15 minutes. And then there's a chance at the end to ask any questions. And perhaps it's just a slightly different perspective to some of the other things on Covidarity this weekend. One of the things I like about this festival is the variety of stuff. So you've got lots of different inspirations, and my theme's very much about doing business for good. I'm really interested in the idea of organising people and resources to create value for communities as well as make money. So that's my thing. So I'm Ruth Anslow from Brighton. I'm the co-founder of HISBE Food and the Good Business Club. I was going to do a show of hands, who knows HISBE Food, who knows the Good Business Club, but it's not quite like that here today. So I'm just going to sort of pretend that you don't. But yeah, HISBE Food and the Good Business Club are both set up to transform business for good. So HISBE is all about how do you organise a business to transform the food industry for good? And then the Good Business Club is how can we help other people do what we did? So it's about helping other change makers start businesses. So my story is like, in 2010, I jacked in my old corporate job. I started the business with my sister, and it was about challenging the status quo and creating change in the world. And through HISBE Food, I don't know if you know it, but HISBE Food is a big blue-fronted supermarket on York Place opposite St Peter's Church in Brighton. And it's a new type of supermarket powered by local people, community spirit, and a social enterprise business model. So the idea is to turn the regular supermarket business model on its head and run it in a different way, which I think is what we've achieved. It's been running for 6 years. It's called HISBE because that stands for how it should be. So we had this vision of how the food industry is and how it needs to change, which led us to create a vision of how it should be. And it's local and purpose-led brands, responsible trading, fair pay for staff and suppliers, standing up for sustainability. So, we've got a real crisis in food. We need to create more sustainable food and farming systems for the future. So it's all about how do you create a supermarket that stands for that and has people sort of engage with the issues, and create a space to bring together suppliers and staff and customers who care about this stuff. So it's a kind of good food community. And then last year, having got HISBE to a place of success after 6 years, we sort of figured out what we're doing. I set up the Good Business Club to help other people who might want to follow in our footsteps. There's plenty of people, all different ages, all different backgrounds, who've got ideas for social change, and they want to create their own living. They want to create their own job, and combining the two is a very powerful thing. So with the Good Business Club, we provide people and resources to help anyone who wants to do that. So, personally, I talk about business a lot. I think there's a real sort of anti-capitalist trend at the moment, which is important actually, but I'm very much in the responsible capitalist camp. I think that business can be an incredible tool, for better or for worse. Businesses shape the world around us. And if money makes the world go round, then business is a big cog in that wheel. And, the idea of organising people and resources around a vision and creating good is very exciting to me. You create employment, you create your own job and other people's jobs. You can create a useful activity and goods and services that people need. So this idea of creating value through business, I love. And I think that business has an enormous capacity to do good. But at the moment, the norm for business is just sort of to take. It's a lot of, and I'm not talking about, your corner shops and people who are just making a living, but big business is organised around sort of extracting maximum value from customers and suppliers and stuff. So it's about an idea of what if all capitalism was responsible capitalism? What if all businesses had a social vision and made a contribution to people and community? That's the kind of thing that I'm into. And hence the sort of rise of social enterprise. So social enterprise is a business that by definition has an economic or social or cultural mission aligned to public benefit, and trades in order to fulfill that mission, and then puts most of its profits back into the mission instead of the shareholders taking the money out. So me and my sister Amy started HISBE And, we don't take massive dividends, and we're not, walking around with Gucci handbags. The idea is that most of the money that HISBE makes goes back into staff, suppliers, or making the food as affordable as we possibly can, rather than making profit for its shareholders. So, yeah, that's my thing. And I was going to say, I get asked why supermarkets. And the short answer is we sort of got pissed off with Tesco. So, we wanted to, kind of got a bee in my bonnet about how supermarkets operate. Because for 15 years, I worked for big global companies, big corporates, the sort of corporate culture that I buck now, But I was working for Unilever and Sara Lee and Procter and Gamble, negotiating with Tesco. And I know that the supermarkets are all powerful in the food industry, and they really dictate to suppliers how it goes. They decide what goes on their shelves. They decide what we buy. They spend millions influencing our food choices towards what's most convenient and profitable for them. And that sort of started to damage our food culture. So I think it's sort of made bad food normal, because what's most profitable and easy for them is food that's very heavy on over-processed elements. It's a long way from what's natural. It's stuff that's high in bad fats and high in bad carbs. And over the decades, they've sort of eroded goodness out of food to make it more profitable for them, which is just part of their business model, unfortunately. But, every pound that we spend in British shops, 60p goes to one of the big four supermarkets, and that's how powerful they are. So what we're trying to do as HISBE is divert some of that money into supermarkets that have a different agenda, because they take that money, yet they underpay workers, they underpay suppliers. They've even been accused of exploiting suppliers. They tend to suck profit out of towns and centralize or even export it, and they make bad food normal. So it's kind of bucking against that and creating another way. So we decided to reinvent the way supermarkets do business, with one store and then another store and then another store, because supermarkets and big businesses are only that way because people made them that way. There's no law of the universe that says they have to be like that. They're only made that way because people strive to keep them that way. So, we're not about running at Tesco with pitchforks and trying to get them to change, because, that's probably not going to happen with that approach. But what we are doing is inventing a new and better way, and growing that way and making that way more relevant for more enlightened shoppers and customers who suddenly get that the way they spend their money can have a big impact. So that's our idea, is that over time we'll make the old way obsolete because the new way will add so much more. And that's what I encourage people to do through the Good Business Club. I say, if you've got an idea for transformative change, you can see how it is and it doesn't sit well with you, and you've got an idea for how it should be, create a better way and demonstrate that it works. And in the end, they'll copy you anyway. So quite frankly, if Tesco copied us tomorrow, we could all go home, because the food industry would be transformed. Everyone would be eating local food and sustainably sourced stuff and paying people fairly. It's just that they wouldn't make billions in profit that gets distributed to shareholders and directors. So, I'm really into the idea of reinvention and creating new ways to challenge the old ways. And that's why we call ourselves supermarket rebels at HISBE. We consider ourselves to be rebels in the food industry, standing proudly alongside people like Infinity and Harriet's of Hove and, all these great other alternatives to supermarkets that really work. And it is working. We've been running 6 years now. We've turned over £8 million. We've kept half of that in the local economy. So a regular supermarket, when you spend £1 at Tesco, they keep only 5p local, and they either centralise or export profit. So they're taking money out of the system, whereas we're keeping at least 58p in every pound we invest back into Brighton or Sussex suppliers and our staff who are local, and local service providers. So, local businesses should really feed the local economy. That's what they're there for. They're not there for, creating money that will sit in Swiss bank accounts, in my opinion. I was going to talk a little bit about my story and how I got to this. I want to talk about purpose, and I want to talk about values, and I want to talk about creating a crowd of followers, because these are the kind of things that are really relevant to anyone who's thinking about a new idea. So I think purpose is interesting. I think the need for purpose comes within all of us. So one thing about humans that we're really good at is we are built to create structure, routine, and navigate the world and make it simple and follow our habits and create structure. But there's also a need to create and reinvent stuff inside us. There's a very creative thing inside us, a need for purpose. It sort of starts off as this weird nagging discontent, like an idea that won't let you be, something that, you know, nags you, and it's not you daydreaming, it's an idea in there that's wanting to come out. And sometimes I think sometimes your purpose is stuck in a cupboard, like knocking, saying let me out. Now I'm not saying everyone has a purpose inside them and they should listen for knocking, but a lot of people do. And a lot of people have this drive to do something else that is outside what they're doing, but friends and family put them off, or they look at the world and they think that couldn't be. But you know, for others, that knocking is there. And for me, there was a knock, and it sort of blew the cupboard doors off. So I was sat there in 2009. I was working for a big company, big corporate company, sat as an expat, living in Barcelona. I had this great big flat with a pool, and I was sort of sat there bringing in good money. But I was sat there on my balcony one day with a glass of cava, and I just had this realization that I was unhappy. It just kind of hit me like a wave. So I'd been, you know, 15 years of, you know, gone to uni, done all the right things, done what you're supposed to do. I, you know, got the next promotion, got the car, 15 years of corporate life. And I realized that I was just sort of making PowerPoint presentations and Excel spreadsheets for other people. I thought, that's not what I set out to do. So I sort of got honest with myself, you know, what's the kind of life I want to lead? And I realized what was missing is there was no meaning in my job. I wasn't following my purpose. So that's what I mean. And I see now, I see younger people, you know, I see younger people doing that more intuitively, straight out of uni or not going to uni, and, you know, creating different ways. So, you know, this idea of having a purpose has brought so much happiness to me. You know, I'm earning like a third of the money I should be or could be earning at my age, but it's just I'm connected to my community and my sense of purpose, and it brings me a lot more happiness. So that's something I'd want, you know, want for anybody. And I decided at that point 10 years ago to make following this purpose a priority in my life. Although it meant reinventing my life, you know, I had to do everything differently, and I had to break a lot of old routines and patterns. So I started with my values. I got together with my sister, who was also looking to do something different with her life, and we were geeked out for 3 years, living in a flat together and working in a flat together in Brighton. Every time we ran out of money, we'd have to go and work again, and we figured out, how do you start a supermarket from scratch? Because we didn't know how to do it. We just thought it needed to be done, you know. But we had an idea. We set out our values, which are the values that you see today, you know, the things that we care about, from local food and high animal welfare to social enterprise and, you know, running a business with ethics. The values have been constant for 10 years and always will be there. So, you know, if you are following this path and you are following a sense of purpose, then I would recommend anyone start with values, get clear on what's important to you. And they're also, as I learned, what attracts people to the business. You know, people like HISBE because it does pursue its own ethics and values. And even if you don't agree with all the ethics and values, you're going to connect with something. And the crowd. So you could say we crowdsourced our supermarket because it all started with a blog. We weren't well connected. It was the very early days of Twitter. So Twitter was quite new, believe it or not. And we started to create a blog about what goes on in the food industry, what's good, what's bad, what's how it is, what's how it should be, and connecting with people, everyone from the Soil Association to the Fair Trade Foundation, everyone who cared about the stuff that we care about. And we started blogging and shining a light on things and getting this conversation going and creating this sort of rallying cry for a new type of supermarket. And over 3 years, we built up a brand and a voice, and eventually got together a business plan for a supermarket and raised the money. We needed 200 grand to do it. So we kind of did it through people. If it hadn't been for Twitter, I don't know if I would be here, which is a really weird thing to say. And I think now social media is more intuitive to people in the next generations. But for us, it was sort of, it was quite new, but it opened and unlocked all the doors for us. So now my and Amy's jobs, you know, we've got people running the store doing it brilliantly. And our jobs now are to be out there embedded in the local fabric of Brighton, sort of championing the cause and, you know, flying the flag for the purpose. You know, we're out there connecting with the local good food community, like Brighton and Hove Food Partnership, the Bevy, and, you know, people into food waste using good food surplus like the Junk Food Project and Paper Round. You know, we're connecting to citywide to spend time on the underlying issues within food in our city, and HISBE becomes then a platform for the bigger issues. So when I'm not my job now isn't to run the shop, it's to use the platform as use it as a platform for bigger issues. So, you know, I can get out in the city and talk about anti-plastic campaigning because we do it in the store, and, you know, I'm out there helping people start up their own food businesses. So now I've kind of become sort of a business activist, I suppose. That's what I'd call myself. I think we're supermarket rebels leading a supermarket revolution by stealth through other people. And that's what it needs, because, you know, we're not going to transform the food industry on our own. It needs other people who are shopping consciously, who are setting up their own food businesses. And it's now my job is about how to equip other people to do what we did. And so, you know, we have a phrase where you start where people are, because change is quite slow. So start where people are. People are shopping in supermarkets, and you sort of do ethics by stealth and show them the impact of their choices and how, you know, by shopping in a different way, they can change the food industry. And that's what HISBE's all about now. And we have plans to grow, so we're replicating and growing stores. The idea is to create a chain of stores in and around Sussex, so we can support and grow the resilience of the local food suppliers. And we nudge our customers in store to make small changes. So over 6 years, we've had an enormous impact in the amount of plastic packaging, for example. So our by buying food loose in our store, there's a massive area where you buy food loose. We sell hundreds of products loose by weight. We've saved 15,000 bits of plastic packaging a month. So, you know, when we start to tell people that, they're like, oh, okay, I get it. I get how I can have an impact. And that's now, it's telling those stories that that to connect people with their shopping behaviours that nudges further change. So yeah, so that's what I'm up to on HISBE, growing the store, becoming a platform for the issues and opening new stores. And then on the Good Business Club, we're helping people do the same. So if you're sitting there on an idea to change the world, or your family and friends don't get it, and the trolls don't like it, and, you know, the detractors don't get it, I want you to know that there are plenty of people out here who do, and who are also working on creating change in their cities and their communities through setting up businesses or supporting people who do. And the Good Business Club is here for you. You know, look it up and see what it's about. But it's basically a dynamic community of good business owners, and it's for people who, real people, you know, who are into making a difference, of any age, of any persuasion and background. And it does three things, basically. We match members to the right people and the resources they need to start or grow their businesses. We amplify their voices to get them more business, and, you know, the power of the community amplifies them. And we create safe spaces for them to contribute to each other. Because the one thing I've learned is that when you're doing business differently, you need to collaborate. So, you know, collaboration is what made HISBE work. We crowdsourced it. We collaborated with thousands of people to get it open. And collaboration is what makes the Good Business Club work. And collaboration is what allows us to start, run and grow businesses for good. So that was my little talk. And I just wanted now to give people the opportunity to ask me any questions, or chat among themselves, or whatever you fancy doing, until we decide to stop, or go out and play in the sun. So are there any questions?
Yeah, so I have a question about price, because sort of ethical and more sustainable businesses, often people have to pay a kind of price premium for that. So
Yes.
that's a challenge that you face, and can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So price is one of the barriers, because often, unfortunately, often good food is overpriced by the big supermarkets and bad food is underpriced. So in our shop, you'll find some things are cheaper than a Tesco. So some of our fruit and veg is cheaper because it's come from down the road and we sell it loose and it hasn't traveled far. But some things are more expensive, and the way we look at it is it's fairly priced. So you can make 20 quid go a long way in our store by buying stuff loose. But you're going to pay more for a tin of tuna than you will in Tesco. And the reason for that is that to source a tin of tuna that hasn't done any harm out there, to the marine environment, and is dolphin friendly and well sourced, you're gonna pay £1.89. Whereas in Tesco you can pay 99p for a tin of tuna. That the consequences of paying for that tuna, paying so little for that tuna, has big impact on farming and marine life. So we talk about fair pricing, and we make the prices as affordable as we possibly can, but still some things are more expensive than your average supermarket shop. But by shopping in a different way and by buying stuff loose, you can still be very thrifty in the shop. But I don't think we'll ever be Asda prices. Unless one day millions of people shop this way, which is the dream.
Yeah, I suppose the problem is just that people don't we're just trained to think in terms of price, and that the lowest price is the best thing, but it's difficult for you to sort of try and rewire people's brains to
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people come to us, because they are starting to think about eating better. So the other side of it is that all our food is real food. It's good food. And like I often say to people, look, you're exactly right. We're trained to think that we should just pay as little as possible. But I always say, pay as little as possible for your phone and for, I don't know, your flights, your travel insurance, with food, we should be buying the best we can afford. It's a different way of thinking. So we have a lot of customers who show an interest, start showing an interest in our shop because they've had an illness. Like, I don't know, they've developed some sort of allergy to dairy or wheat because the quality of food out there is so poor nowadays. Or they've had cancer in the family, or they've had a child with an illness, and they start really thinking about what they're eating. And then they come to us, and people like Infinity, they come into the shops where they're going to pay a bit more, but they've made that connection that it's really good. It's good food, not supermarket food. So that's another angle that people kind of join us with. It's not just the activists and the people who care about green issues that come in. Anybody else? Good food, not supermarket food. So
I actually have a question. Yeah, if you can hear me. What was the the most difficult step during your whole process of creating HISBE and the shop?
The most difficult thing was to ignore the detractors. So, there were a lot of people when we were starting up just didn't get it. They just didn't get why, we were very clear that there was a need in between Tesco on one hand and vegan and vegetarian supermarkets on the other hand, that if we were going to tip good food into the mainstream, there had to be something more accessible in between. But a lot of people didn't get it, and we had so many detractors at the beginning and haters. People would say, it's just not going to work. And the hardest thing was actually ignoring that and, having the confidence to go forward anyway, and understand that, for every person that's a detractor, there's someone who's a supporter. So I think, ignoring the detractors, and we got a lot of trolls at the beginning. And some people just want to pull you down if you've got an idea. And so, that was my biggest learning, to just go forward confidently when you've got a good idea.
And did you easily find a lot of support? Or
yeah, we found supporters through social media. So by the time we opened, we had thousands of people locally who were supporting us, and we'd done a big crowdfunding campaign. So we raised £30,000 back in 2013. We raised £30,000 by selling vouchers for the store before it opened. So we'd created a customer base. A lot of people had vouchers that they wanted to spend in the store, and that was really good because we were able to go then to the detractors and to investors and go, look, there's a lot of people here who really love this idea and have even bought vouchers for a shop that isn't open yet, and are willing and waiting to spend it. So yeah, there's always supporters. Sometimes the detractors can be louder, and that's the key, is to move on from them and find the support. Any other questions or thoughts?
Hi, I wanted to ask a question related to the prices again. My question is, see, the thing is, it's not about I'm a student living in Brighton from Pakistan. Right now, the exchange rate for my currency is that £1 is 214.19 of my currency. So
Right.
yeah, I just want to sort of counter the whole idea that we're trained to look for cheap prices. It's not just that. A lot of people want to be healthy, they want to live better lives, they just can't afford to. But see, my question is that since sometimes it's, you were talking about how some things are cheaper and you can be thrifty, but not always. And I get that. And I'm not saying you're a bad person for saying that, just to be clear. But I'm just wondering, since your intention is obviously to sort of create sustainable change and promote better habits, considering that, unfortunately, and this is not just in the UK, all over the world, even in my country, if you want to buy ethical and shop ethical, you have to have the privilege to spend a lot more than the average person. So my question in these cases is always that, how do we then reach that stage of, sustainable change, so that it's sustainable change, and it's not just that some people who have the money can, because then it's not, then we're not really able to create change. So without having to go broke or without being unfair to the people who you're working with, how do you think we could actually reach that stage of sustainable change?
Well, that's a big question, and it all starts with people doing what they can afford to do. So we've got, we have customers in our shop who have got more than the average person, and that we should be attracting in our shop everybody who can afford to make better choices. I think actually the problem we've got is that a lot of people who could afford to make better choices don't. They'll still buy the free range eggs, they'll still buy the 20 chicken breasts for £2, and they'll still buy the underpriced food that creates problems in the food industry. So our job is to move people who could make the choices into making better choices, and that's our job, and that's the job of Infinity and other ethical focused supermarkets that don't. We're not profiteering, so our food is as cheap as we could possibly make it without going out of business, and it's still expensive to some people. So I get it. And then there are other ways. So the more people that gravitate to that cause, the cheaper it will become. So if a whole wave of people who can afford to make those changes and can afford to support local farmers and all the rest of it, if they do, the supply eventually over time becomes cheaper and more comparative anyway. And then the other thing is there are ways that people on lower incomes can afford better food. There are cooperative food buying schemes. There are, if you come into our place and buy rice loose and vegetables loose, and you come in when the day before the fresh veg comes in, we've got discounted stuff. You can always find ways to save money, and maybe you just start by buying some things at our place, but a lot of things are the same. If you spend 55p on a pint of milk, you can spend 55p on a pint of milk in Morrison's or Sainsbury's, and only 1 penny goes to the farmer. When you spend 55p on a pint of milk in HISBE, 49p goes to the farmer. So it's about what you want to do with the money that you can afford to do it with. But yeah, there's no magic wand. There's no way that we can suddenly make good food available and affordable for everybody. But it starts with the people who can make those choices making them, and it starts with not profiteering from food. So it's a big complex question.
Can I mention the economy for the common good in response to that question? Is it Gauzia?
Yeah.
So Ruth is interested in this movement called the Economy for the Common Good, which we've just set a local chapter of in Brighton. And the idea of this movement is basically that, to make it so that the more ethical and sustainable products actually become the cheaper products, and it does that by like a balance sheet which assesses how ethical a company is, and then by getting local governments or national governments to give sort of legal incentives, so like tax breaks or priority in public procurement or anything like that, so that the more ethical companies are finally not facing the structural disadvantage that they face in our economy at the moment, where profit is the only thing that is important, and then companies who are trying to act responsibly towards all their stakeholders, like HISBE, they become unaffordable, or so that's something which you're interested in doing, right, Ruth?
Yeah, exactly. So in line with what we think about. But yes, it is an unequal world. I mean, the people producing crap food they're the ones that get all the subsidies. You know, the people producing food on massive scales and an industrialized level and making it highly processed, their business models are reliant on cheap oil and cheap labor. And there's going to become a point where cheap oil and cheap labor are not tolerated and accepted and even available in the way that they used to be. So, you know, we have to move from these models, otherwise we won't have a sustainable future for food and farming. And but we have the challenges of making it affordable for everyone. You know, a big issue that shops like us face are the high prices of rent and rates. You know, we pay an enormous amount of money to have a shop, and you know, if there was some sort of relief on rates and rent, it would make an enormous difference to people like us. And you know, we don't get the same sort of tax breaks that someone like Tesco gets. It's very hard to compete with those big guys. But we have to keep going, and we have to, you know, just keep accepting low margins, but making the money that we need to survive.
Thank you. That's actually really, really informative. And I like what you said about how people who have the money still don't spend it in better ways, because I think that's not just for Brighton. I think it's true all around the world that people who have, you know, the economic power to be able to, yeah.
It's no good blaming the state of the world on poor people.
Exactly.
They didn't make it that way. You know? Yeah. It's people who have money and resources make the world the way it is.
Yeah.
So to redirect and wake people up, get them to see that when they spend their money, the way they spend it, it has an impact for everybody. And then when people start to see that and there's a consciousness about how they're spending, it will become a better world for everybody. But yeah, you can't blame poor people for the world's problems. Thank you. That was a good discussion. I enjoyed it. Does anybody else have a question or contribution?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I think I would have, I don't know if it's really like a last question, depending on if there are like others afterwards. But like as a member of like this festival, like the Covidarity festival, do you have you kind of already said that during your presentation, but do you have like a kind of like a last word for people who would try to, you know, make a change, or in some way? Would it be like in a shop, a charity, a project, or whatever? Because that's kind of what we're trying to do, like in some way with this, like through this festival. So like
And it's what you say. It's what you're saying all throughout the Covidarity Festival. It's about community and collaboration. So my last word is, if you're trying to make change, you can't do it on your own, and it's very lonely and very difficult if you attempt to. So reach out for the people doing the same thing as you. And if it's a business that you're working on, reach out to the Good Business Club. And, you know, there are others out there, but find your peers, find your people who will help you make it happen, because it's so much easier and more enjoyable, and everything becomes possible when you work and you collaborate with others.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure to chat with you guys and connect.
Yeah, thank you very much, and have a great day. I don't know if like other people have other questions. Maybe you don't. Seems like no. All right. Well, thank you very much, Ruth, and we will send you the link of the live.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Take care, everyone.